Hi, this is Kat Chancellor with Stamp Art Connection and StampArtConnection.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I wanted to show you some products that came out of the mini catalog and celebrations. I'm really raving about this card right here, and I'm going to show you the products that I used to make it. It is primarily the Classic Culch stamp set with the dies that includes this, as well as it also comes with these really neat little domes that you can use to make a shaker card. There's also a stamp set, it's kind of an accompanied stamp set that is called the Sweet Treats, and I'm going to use this stamp set to make this card right here. And I'm going to turn it into just a plain shaker card. You could use the dome, but I'm not. And I'm also going to use another stamp set from the catalog called Time of Giving. I'm using this background stamp right here. My background piece here is going to be created using part of the bundle that's called the Adorning Designs Decorative Masks. Now you get a number of wonderful patterns that come with these masks, decorative masks, and I'm going to use this one right here. But you are not limited. Look at all that. You have the beautiful snowflakes. You have these really nice scallops, and then you have this nice kind of nice dot pattern. Now these masks are actually part of another bundle that I'll talk about later, but I just want to show how you can use them and in lots of different ways, and then I want to go ahead and demonstrate how we're going to create this wonderful background. So let me just go ahead, and I have it pulled out right here. I have some stamps, some inks, and we're going to use some inks to color our little fruit cake. And I'm using cinnamon cider. I'm going to use Old Olive and Real Red. And then for my background, I'm going to use Gray Granite. And that's going to be our background stamping. So I'm just going to put these over here. Now, to create this design, we're going to be using the Gilded Leafing products. So you are going to need some heat and stick powder. You're going to need some Versamark, and we're going to do a special little treatment. So you're going to need some clear embossing powder as well. Now you can see here I have added kind of a embellishment here on the stand with some copper. So you're going to need some copper embossing powder or some other kind of metallic embossing powder other than gold. I found this pen, which is a Versamark marker, and when I went to a craft fair once, and I'm going to use that to apply some Versamark to some of my stamped images. So this is something you're gonna need. Now I want you to stay with me to the end because I'm going to show you a neat trick about how you're going to color on regular cardstock, and we're going to use Memento ink instead of StazOn ink to do some coloring, because I'm going to use my inks. I'm not going to use stamping blends or any marker. It's just going to be direct from the ink pad. Okay, so my base card is going to be, I believe it's soft suede. So I'm going to grab a piece of soft suede, and then I'm going to grab 2 pieces of Whisper White. One is going to be cut at 5 1/4 by 4, and the other one we're going to cut down to a much smaller size because we're going to layer them. And you're going to need a window sheet, and I'm going to show you a neat trick about where to get your window sheet. So I think that's basically all the pieces and parts that we're going to need. It's a lot of product, but I'm going to promise you, you're really going to enjoy it. Oh, and I can't forget this wonderful ribbon that's also part of the mini catalog. You're going to need a piece of this. All right? Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the first step for making this card is you're going to grab your scoreboard, and we're going to go ahead and cut this. And I like to cut it kind of long way, so it's going to be cut at 4 1/4, which is right there. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to score this at 5 1/2, which is right there. I'm going to grab my bone folder, and I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of rub this like that. All right, I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to grab my piece of Whisper White that I'm going to use for my background. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring out a piece of cardstock. This is cut at 5 1/4 by 4. And I'm going to bring in my mask. And if you look at your mask carefully, you'll see that there's like a very smooth side, and then there's kind of a rougher side. I mark, which is the top of my mask, simply because I want to make sure that I consistently clean the right side, and I leave, like, this side is clean, but I want to make sure that I'm not using both sides, because I'm dirtying both sides. So that's just something that I do. Okay, I'm going to lay down my mask right on my card. I'm going to grab my Versamark, and I'm going to kind of hold a corner, and I'm just going to take my Versamark, and I'm just going to kind of go along into the ridges of my mask. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not gonna cover 100%. Okay, but what it does cover is going to be enough to kind of give you this very nice antique effect. Okay, and I hope you can kind of see how I spread that. Then I'm just going to lift it up, and you can see, let me just go ahead and open up a cloth right here, and I'm going to put my mask down, and then I'm going to grab another cloth, and I'm just going to kind of lay it over there because I don't want this to dry on my mask. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of sandwich it there between these this moist baby wipes. This makes it a lot easier to clean if you do it this way. All right, when you're looking at your card, I hope that you can see that, I'm trying to find that not all of I'm just trying to find a nice way. there, you can kind of see that it didn't really go across the entire piece. Okay, let me see if I can bring in a light here. And do you see? There you go. You see how I have areas that are not completely lined with that got the coverage of the Versamark. Okay, the entire pattern wasn't impressed upon it. That's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my Versamark and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up some Versamark with this marker, and I'm just going to kind of just paint some Versamark across to kind of just finish some of those lines that may not have been completed. Just kind of finish some of them. This has two sides, so I can pick up Versamark at the other side. And again, I can just kind of paint, just making sure that it kind of, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because that is the key to the effect, is that it's not totally perfect. And here, this didn't take it all, so I'm going to have to. Now, another thing you can use, and let me just go ahead. I'm going to grab a paintbrush, and I can just pick up some of the Versamark with my brush, and I can do the exact same thing. I can just kind of paint this across to make sure that I have Versamark going all the way across, and I'm kind of looking at this, kind of looking across it at an angle. I'm really sorry that my lights are just there. You can kind of see how it's much more, the lines are much more uniform across my cardstock now, because I've just kind of filled in. Okay, so now that we've done that, and make sure I clean off my paintbrush here. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and bring in, our coffee filter. We're going to take our cardstock, and I'm using the heat and stick powder. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this all the way across my card. And you know what I forgot to do is I forgot to use the little embossing buddy. But it's not going to be as critical for this pattern, for this design, as it would be for a much finer lined design. So I'm just going to put that there. And now I'll bring in my heat tool. Okay, and you should have a sticky, it should be kind of sticky to the touch, and you should be able to see it now a little bit better in the light. Now, if you put your heat tool on it too long, you will actually bake this, and it will no longer be sticky. So you can see the way I did it is I just kind of gradually kind of put it across my paper. I am going to bring in a tin that I use, and you may recognize this tin, because what I do is I like to put my entire piece of paper into the tin, And then I like to apply, and a trick to keeping it from sticking to your fingers is go ahead and use your embossing buddy and just kind of cover your fingers like that. That way you can kind of pick up your gold leafing. Or if you prefer, you can always just kind of, grab and just begin to grab and lay it across your sheet. The other way you can do is just, I like to just as I sprinkle it, there are larger sheets that come out that you can just kind of separate them out and lay them across. And then you can see, kind of have to open up some. Some are folded. And I'm just kind of laying them across, patting them down. So now that I think I have most of the coverage, I'm going to close this because these will just blow out completely. And I have a brush, one of these, and I'm just going to kind of burnish across my paper with this brush. And there you go. Isn't that pretty? So I'll just go ahead and cover this up. I have all my other little pieces in there. I just cover this up. And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of wipe the excess off. And then if I have more, I'll kind of wipe that off like that. Okay, so now I have, this is going to be my base card. And it's going to set on top of this piece of Whisper White here. So I'm going to cut this down. Now that I've done my pattern and I've burnished my gold leaf on it, now I can cut this down to 5 3/4. So I love my little trimmer here. So let's cut this down to 3 3/4. And and you can kind of just do a little bit on both sides. And then we want 5. So you kind of look and see, I'm going to have to get my bigger trimmer for that because that little trimmer ends at 4. So I want this at 5. So I'm just going to go over here. This is my score. So there's my, okay, so now I have it cut, and I did it afterwards. I have it cut, and it's going to fit very nicely right on top of this piece of paper, just like that. Okay, so now looking at my card, I'm going to go over here. We're going to grab our die, because I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this through my Big Shot, and I'm going to kind of place it where I want it, and that's about where I want it, right there. One of the things I did, so here's a tip for you, is when I lay this on the Big Shot, I put a piece of paper right over it. Now the reason why I did that was because it will get, the gold leaf would embed in my plate. So I don't want to do that. So by putting a paper on it, I kind of keep the gold leaf from embedding in all the little nooks and crannies of my plate. Now, it looks a little dull after I've done that, but all you have to do is just grab your brush, and you can burnish it back to a nice shine. That's all you have to do. Burnish it back, and keep this piece, because we're going to make something out of that. See, and we just kind of burnished it back to a nice shine. I'm going to put this aside. And there is the front of our card. Okay. So now we have, this piece is going to go there, and then this is going to go there, and we're now going to find our window sheet. Now this is what my hint was for finding a piece of window sheet, should you not have one available. What you do is you go to one of your, when you buy, put in an order. This is a free celebration stamp set. I believe it's with $50 purchase, you get this. But when you open it up, it's photopolymer, and it's got 2 pieces of acetate, a very thin piece, which you can just kind of pull off. And it's really not much. But then there's this thicker piece, and you can just pull off these stamps, and Stampin' Up! Has this nice pattern now inside the container. You just pull those off and put them in the stamp set, and now I have a window sheet. Look at that. So let's use this window sheet, and it's not dirty. It looks good. If you have any concerns, I kind of grab a nice soft cloth, and I just kind of wipe it, and it's good to go for our card. So what we're going to do is we're just going to basically, and it fits perfectly on the back of our card. Look at that. So we're going to go ahead, and as you recall, how we make cards is that we're going to need, let me see if I have we're going to need some of these foam adhesive strips, and the foam adhesive strips are going to go after we put this window sheet on. So I just take this, and I like to grab my snail, if I can find my snail here. And I'm just going to go around and make sure we get in here so you can be sure to see. Whenever I use an adhesive, I always use my silicone mat here. And I'm just going to go around. And then I'm going to apply my window sheet. and it's a little bit long, so I can just go ahead and trim it. Is I'm going to take my piece of cardstock, and I'm going to lie where I want this this window to lie on my white cardstock, and I'm just going to I'm just going to make some arbitrary, just some very light marks like that. So hopefully you can see I made some very light marks, you know, like right there. And then I can make sure that this kind of falls in line right there. Now you can see these lines, but that's okay. Don't worry about it, because when we put our stamp, our background, we're not going to see those. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab some gray granite. We're going to stamp our background. Some gray granite, and we're going to need Time of Giving stamp set here. Stamp. And I am going to use a stamp off technique. I am not going to stamp the full. I like the look of a very light. And so that my edge is clear, I'm just going to kind of mask a little. Okay, so you can kind of see there's my background. But I'm going to grab a piece of sponge, and I'm just going to grab some of the sponge, because all I want to do is I just kind of want to smear. I kind of just want to smear that a little bit. Kind of soften. I want to kind of soften that background. Okay, so you see how I kind of smeared? I kind of softened it a bit, and you can still almost see the pencil marks right there. So this is how that's going to go. You can kind of see it kind of gives a very nice contrast. I need to do a little bit more up in there, simply because I want to. There you go. Okay, now let's go ahead and start working on our goodies that are going to go inside our little dome. Okay, I'm grabbing my stamp set, and I'm pulling out this is like some kind of fruit cake, and I'm grabbing the stand that it's going to go on. I've got these two stamps. All right, I'm just going to grab some cardstock, and I'm going to grab some Memento black ink. Make sure this is nice and inked up. Make sure I'm getting all kinds of ink on here. And I'm using my photopolymer I'm using photopolymer stamp, so I used my foam mat. Okay, so that came off nicely. And now we're going to do this one. Okay, now if we do get just a tad of it, just isn't, you can always just grab a marker and just kind of fill it in a bit. It's just going to be just fine, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to color these. And because this is Memento ink, and here's the tip that I told you to stick around for, we're going to use a aqua painter, but we're going to use an aqua painter that is filled with alcohol. And what this does, by using our inks directly, and I'm going to use gray granite, what it does is it allows you to paint on the Versamark, paint on your Memento without, look at that, without any kind of fear that you're going to smear your Versamark, because like if you had this filled with water. Because the only way you can use an aqua painter with water and paint with your ink is if you're using shimmery white with stays on, right? Okay, so we got that one. Now I'm going to clean this off, and we're going to grab, and I'm just kind of grabbing my ink from my tray right here, and I'm going to just do my little berries there. And I've got some little, I'm going to think these are cherries in here. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint those. I've got my green, and I'm using cinnamon cider. So I'm going to grab, oops, let me open up grab some of this, paint this leaf, and paint this leaf here. And then I'm going to grab my cinnamon cider. And then you can go ahead and you can add a little bit of dark. See, and it's almost like using the other part of your stamping blend. You just simply just add a little bit more pigment, and this is all alcohol that's in this writer. And look at that, there you go. And it's not at all doing any damage to my Memento ink, which is water soluble. So we're using alcohol in our aqua painter. And there you go. Isn't that pretty? Now, here's the next piece. Now that we've done that, we're going to take out our little Versamark again. And I'm going to take my Versamark pad, and I do have some Versamark refill. So, you know, I could just add this straight on my pad like that. And what I'm going to do, I'm kind of using this as a brush. I'm going to brush Versamark all along the top of my Christmas pudding here, or my Christmas fruitcake. I'm also going to add it on my leaves, and I'm going to add it on my berries. Now, this is where I'm going to cut this in half. Okay, because I got Versamark all over that, and I just want to make sure I got a good smattering. Then I'm going to add some Versamark on this. I'm just going to add it here along the edge. I'm going to add it down here, and I'm just going to kind of add it on the, and that's it. I'm just kind of a suggestion of Versamark. So now I'm going to bring in my tray, and I'm going to put this one aside because I'm going to use, for this one, I'm taking out my clear embossing powder. I'm going to just cover that with clear embossing powder. Okay. Then I'm going to take my copper, and I'm just going to add some copper embossing powder to that. And I could add silver, but I kind of like, I just want to kind of play with the metals, because I think the metals are going to be really pretty. So let's just grab our heat gun. Okay, so look at how pretty that is. It just kind of gives it just a really nice patina, if you will. And then look at our little pudding. Do you see how we've got a nice gloss on our pudding? So now comes the hardest part of this whole card, is the fussy cutting of our pieces here, because this set does not come with dies. So you're going to have to fussy cut it. There, that's the hardest part of the whole card, is doing that fussy cutting. Well, let me just throw all these pieces and parts away. Okay, so here's my base card. This is where my top is going to go, and my pudding, and I'm going to kind of bend my pudding a little bit. Because my pudding is going to go right there, and I can bend it so it looks a little domey. And then I'm going to put this, is going to go right there on top of it. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so then remember I drew a line. I had these two lines here, and I think I had this line right here. So I kind of want my pudding to go right there. right? There's my two lines right about there. It's going to float a little bit. Okay, and the reason why it's going to float is because you're going to have all kinds of little sugar stuff on the bottom. All right, so let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, I like to grab my my buddy first and put this down. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my dimensionals, and I'm just going to put my dimensionals right down the middle of my pudding. I don't know if this is a pudding or if it's a fruit cake. If you know, leave me a comment. Okay, and then there's my line is like right there. I don't necessarily want my pudding to go all the way to the bottom. So, and I have these two lines. I have two lines right there, and I've got a line there. So I'm just going to kind of put this right about okay, so there's my pudding. It's in there. So now we're going to take our dome sheet, and again I like to put just some embossing buddy on the back of that because I don't want all my sugar to stick on that. And I'm going to grab these sheets I have here, rather these foam adhesive strips, and I'm just going to start putting that around. Okay. So now what I have is I have some of this leftover stamping ice glitter that I am going to use because it looks like sugar. And I just have to put a little bit in there. And then I'm just going to place my dome. I'm going to press around my foam strips. And look at that. You see it? You see the sugar? It looks marvelous. Okay. Now I should have my little plate, and I'm just going to place that right there, and I am going to use some all-purpose glue. And there you go. Isn't that pretty? Look at that. That is just gorgeous. All right, now I'm going to grab this delicious ribbon I have over here. So now I'm just going to grab some of this ribbon, and I always like to make my bows, but I keep the ribbon still on the roll, and then I just kind of find a kind of like a smooth end. Oh, you can see how the ribbon matches my nails. I just kind of find a smooth end. It's going to go right there with a couple of pieces, a couple of glue dots. One in the middle, and then one right alongside. So I've got three. I have three glue dots. 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to put that just so that you can see the top of that little, right about there. And there, isn't that pretty? So now we'll put this. Let me put my ribbon scissors away. And now we will put this on. And because it's a shaker card, I am going to adhere it with some tear tape, because if it's going to get shook around, I don't want it coming apart. So now I like to open this up. I'm going to place this right there. And there you go. There is your card. Isn't that pretty? And if you want to put a sentiment, you can put a sentiment. Now let me show you. I told you to save a little piece. Let me show you another card that I made. I used that little dome piece, right? That little dome piece that I had cut out of that card, I used to make this card, and I made that as a little dome. Now, the other neat thing you can do is, here are the other stamps that come with this stamp set. What you can do is I painted every one of these using my alcohol aqua painter, and then you can see where I used my clear embossing powder to emboss them. And I did the little apple. I think this is a little candy apple. And then here's my apple pie. And then I did some more. So in here, I even have another little stand that I did, only this one I did with gold. Okay, because this one is gold. But I have all my little pieces in here. Okay, so I even have my little flag that I could put, if I wanted to, I could put it over here on my card. So there you go. Here are some wonderful cards made with the Sweet Treats. And I'm going to kind of open this back up. This is the Sweet Treats stamp set. I am using the dies from the Colch bundle, which I'm going to give you another card on how to use that one, but I'm using those dies. And I also used this wonderful mask from the gingerbread bundle, and we went back and we used some of our gilded leafing to really create a wonderful card. It wasn't that hard, and just any kind of glitter or whatever you have to kind of create a shaker card. And even though you have the dome, and I'll show you another example in another video of how we can use these wonderful domes that fit inside of our cards. I wanted to show you how you could just use a plain piece of acetate that is available in your Stampin' Up stamp sets from Stampin' Up, that you know, it's just free acetate. Go ahead and repurpose it and use it, you know, in the best way you can to create a shaker card. Okay? So, hey, this is Kat Chancellor with Stamp Art Connection and stampartconnection.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. Thank you so much for spending your time with me this evening. Um, Hit like, leave a comment, and please share. I really appreciate any comments. And if you are looking for some products, look me up on stampartconnection.com. This is Kat Chancellor. Happy stamping.